play.
In the past, I have not talked about my family except when my children were born or when I got married. And I thought I should tell you today that my eldest child has graduated from university. She has received an honors. Thank you. Thank you. That she has graduated from university with an honors degree in development studies. She selected that subject as she aspires to work and to serve the Jamaat in the developing world. And in September, she will join me to work by my side.
Such a proud father.
Yeah.
How do you feel when you see that video?
That was a long time ago.
It certainly was.
It's a very long time ago.
And what inspired you to go into development studies?
It was more an instruction than an inspiration. My whole childhood, my parents had told us, all of us, that it was our duty and our purpose in life to help in any way that we could. So all three of us grew up with this notion, and of course Ali wasn't born at the time, with the knowledge or the notion that we would, at some point, if we could, help with the agencies or with the work of the imamate.
So you knew from a very young age that's the direction you were going to go into?
More than that, from about age 13, I knew what I was going to be doing, because I wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to study physics, astrophysics. But my father told me that he saw me more towards the health and education side of things. Of course, when I got to university, there was no course of study in international development. There were courses that focused on developing countries, but there wasn't a concentration or a major in that topic. So I lobbied the faculty and I designed my own concentration.
This was at Harvard?
Yeah, it's called the Special Concentrations Department, and they're usually the intellectual misfits, of which I obviously didn't fit the mold. But so I put together a course of study that focused on sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia.
Wow, and that's how you got into it?
That's how I got into, well, that's how I acquired a lot of the actual canon knowledge in the field of development. I got to study with some amazing international development superstars of the time, and still today, people who are recognized as having written the sort of canon literature of development economics, development finance, development, the history and geopolitics of the countries where we work. So it gave me a very good intellectual academic grounding in what I was then going to be practicing at Eglemore.
Part of the reason we're having this conversation is because we're marking 30 years since this all started for you, since you've been doing this work. What have you seen in terms of changes? You've visited so many countries, countless countries, and more than just in healthcare and education. What differences have you seen in these 3 decades?
Massive changes, not all for the better, I have to say, but massive changes. I was recently in Mumbai and I didn't recognize the city. I mean, it's changed so much. So many of the areas that were little villages the first time I went to Hyderabad, or I went to even Gilgit, these were literally villages, and today they're bustling metropolis, and the world is far more connected, both in terms of communications, but also travel and connections, trade, and knowledge and understanding between peoples. That has changed a lot. Also, I will say, I think there has been a significant shift in quality of life in the urban areas. Not so much in the real rural areas, but in the urban areas, I think people live today a lot more comfortably than they did when I first started in the 1980s.
And you said when I first asked you this that it's not all for the better. So what hasn't been for the better in the past 30 years?
I think inequality it remains. Inequality remains sometimes for geographical reasons, sometimes for political reasons, sometimes for gender reasons. But one would have thought that with the increase in quality of life would have come a would have come more parity in our world, but I don't think that has changed that much.
And of course, we've seen so much more polarization. We've seen extreme views not only amplified but celebrated. You have worked with Mona Hazri Imam for 30 years. You've lived your whole life by his side. When he sees the world as it is today, and when you have these kind of conversations with him, what learnings do you have, and what can you tell us about how things are looking now? Because there's a lot of people who are really worried.
Understandably. But he has always taught me and built the institutions with a 100 to 500 year perspective. So he doesn't respond to crises in the immediate unless it threatens the well-being or the livelihood or the life of the Jamaat. He has lived through, you've got to figure, I mean, in his life, he started in the Second World War, lived through colonial times, post-colonial times, the winds of change, the Cold War, and all throughout those years, those many decades, he worked with the governments that he had to work with, regardless of what their leanings were or crises that were happening, because he sees the long-term future of the Jamaat and the well-being of the Jamaat as being more important than responding to immediate crises. And he taught me that as well. So, you know, if things go awry in a political sense, it doesn't really, it's not worth reacting today. Just try to ensure that the institutions are there. He often told me that his main goal with the AKDN agencies was to build institutions that were stronger and would outlast the people who populate them. And so these institutions are meant to outlast Hazri Imam and me and everybody else for the benefit of the Jamaat and their neighbours.
Let's talk about the institutions and the AKDN specifically. There's so many different agencies and they do so many different things. So how is it all connected? I
think that again, going back to Hazri Imam's approach, so you can bring in development inputs, health, education, housing, etc., etc. And in isolation, they will make an impact. So health has a very rapid impact on quality of life, healthcare, access to healthcare, especially primary healthcare, following the principles of the Alma-Ata Convention, you know, family health, women and child health. Education is more of a long-term investment, so the impact is generational. It takes at least one generation, sometimes more, to see the impact of education as a development input. But all of these things in isolation do not amount to concrete or lasting development. It's the multi-input area development approach where you bring everything at the same time, so economic development and banking and insurance and all of the inputs that we have today. So sometimes people will say, telecommunications, why do you do that? Or, you know, insurance, why? These are all institutions that allow for civil society to grow and prosper and for people to have quality of life. And if they're all working together, which increasingly I like to think they are, then development is lasting and is far more widespread than just building a hospital.
What are the biggest challenges as we see how the world is changing that the AKDN and other organizations like it are facing when it comes to their work?
Well, I would say many things. I think the biggest worry is, of course, climate change and the impact that that is having in the areas where we work. And even however big the AKDN is, we can impact how we do business and how we travel and how we consume things and how our vendors and suppliers act as well. So, you know, we committed to carbon neutral by 2030, and it's amazing because the institutions are, I think, going to get there, including AKU and the health system and so on and so forth. However, the world has to change this progression and this heating of our planet. And therefore, as a development organization looking back 30 years, we knew it was going to happen 30 years ago. We did nothing about it. My generation was very apathetic, and unfortunately now we're on a path where correction is going to require radical change. And I don't think that a development organization, however big and powerful the AKDN becomes, can change that in isolation. It's going to take a global effort.
What about migration? We've seen that as such a big issue of our time.
So I've always told my children that when you look at the Mediterranean and the Sahel and migration out of there, so it's taught or it's reported as a crisis. It's not a crisis. This is the shape of things to come. The Sahara is going to grow, and North Africa, the Sahel, and the northern parts of the continents are going to become unlivable. So people are crossing the Mediterranean not in response to a political crisis or a war, but because they are climate refugees. And that will continue. There are many areas of our world, once the glaciers are gone, we'll run out of water. That is a reality. And if we project ourselves into that future, you have to try to work out in anticipation where they're going to walk to, because very often these are not wealthy communities. So they're going to have to be able to access somewhere that has water, arable land, and we as a development organization looking 200 years hence, we're going to have to anticipate those areas of the world that are going to be livable and welcoming to migrants and refugees, climate refugees. And if we want to do a good job today, we have to position ourselves for that change.
It's a big adjustment.
It's huge.
Right.
And it's huge for entire populations that we work with. The high mountain areas, they all depend on glacier water.
You mentioned your children in the last answer. I wanted to ask you, I'm a mom, so I wanted to ask you as a mother how you inspire your children to be global citizens. I understand you took Sarah and Ilian to India and Pakistan this year. What advice do you have for us parents?
Well, I think that we probably parent the way we were parented. And so my parents brought me up with an ethical code of, pluralism and acceptance, generosity, patience, kindness. And I think that my children have learnt, I hope, similar things from me, to consider the other first, to always put others first, to be empathetic and sympathetic, generous of mind and in time and spirit. And so I don't know if that works for all children, but I've certainly enjoyed bringing my children up with that ethos.
How were those visits for them?
Well, they actually started traveling with me when they were tiny.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the first time we went to Africa together, I think they were 3 and 4. And I always wanted them to see the reality. And so they've driven around many countries just to see what life is like in the villages, to have a real granular understanding of what it is to live in a rural area in a developing country. And so I'm afraid, poor things, they didn't really have a choice. They just became part of the collective. But from my great-grandfather to my father to my children and my siblings, I think that we all have more or less the same approach. It's like you're born into a position where you can do a lot of good, now get on and do it.
And speaking of your siblings and Prince Amin, we've seen Maulana Hazri Imam travel less because he's getting up in age. And you've really taken the torch with your children and your siblings. How has that been?
Well, of course, it's meant more traveling and more responsibility, frankly. But, Hazri Imam's going to be 88, and travel was becoming difficult, so Prince Rahim and I have been taking on more responsibility than before. Hazri Imam, he's 88. He was an Olympian. He has the strength of an ox. I think that kind of level of sporting performance stays with you for the rest of your life. So, he is very well in himself, but travel is difficult. And I think that we, as much as we can pick up of his responsibilities and, representing him in all of the many things that you don't realize how many there are during the course of the year, but in so many different sectors and fields that, I think all of us have tried to fill the space as best we could.
And one of those things is the Aga Khan Award for Architecture. In 2025, we'll see the 16th award ceremony for the award. What do you think the impact of that award has been?
If I can start from where the beginning starts for me, I think it was sometime in the late 1970s or early 1980s that Hazram said that he was going to develop this award, and I asked him why put this amount of time and resources into architecture, and he said it's the only form of artistic expression that inherently can never be politicized, which I thought was a fascinating approach. And if you start from that starting point, his starting point, it has truly underlined the diversity and the incredible plurality of Muslim cultures and civilizations. And that one award has taken us around the world, and it takes the media with it, and it takes diversity with it, and it takes the cultural heritage and traditions of every country that is part of it, from Mali to Malaysia. And it puts everyone together discussing something which is apolitical, and premiating something which is inherently good for humanity. Good architecture improves quality of life. I know there are many quotes like that.
Right.
You know, the built environment affects our quality of life and our mental health as well as everything else. So I think the award for architecture has had a far deeper and more widespread impact than even the people involved in it are aware of.
You just mentioned mental health, and that's something that I think there's still a stigma in certain communities surrounding mental health. What's your thought on what's happening in the world, especially with our youth?
So from my work context, I would say that we need to pool our resources, and we are currently pooling our resources to respond to this crisis in our world. We have multiple units that are competent helping in mental health issues, and we need to make that far more accessible, and we need to make everyone aware that these resources exist. We have anonymous hotlines and helplines. We have the Brain and Mind Institute. We have now a concerted effort from all of the various players in the health sector to focus on this issue. From a human level, I mean, as a parent, right, one always worries about the mental health of one's children and how one can ensure that they grow up to be well-realized, well-adjusted, to feel comfortable in their own skins. And in that sense, I think it's so important to give them the autonomy, to give them the freedom to make mistakes and learn from them, and to experiment in life and grow themselves, because you only learn by doing, right? You don't really learn as a human by being taught. I can only speak as a parent in this, but I think to give your children the love and support that they can be themselves, whoever they are, as long as they're good humans. That's the important thing.
And that they'll make mistakes.
That doesn't mean that mental health issues will go away if everyone takes that approach, because there are so many reasons for mental health crises. And obviously you can't fix everything in the world, but I do think that as individuals, to give the next generation the autonomy and the freedom to be themselves, no matter what. The world changes. Things change, societies change, cultures change. We just have to go with it.
And accept people for who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to go back to the division and fragmentation we're seeing in society. You sit on the board at the Global Center for Pluralism. How important is it right now to really understand the meaning of pluralism?
It's probably more important than before. Well, it's always been important. Whenever there's conflict, social conflict or war or misunderstanding between cultures and traditions, pluralism is called for. It's the one thing that will prevent, or it's the one form of education that will allow people to understand their neighbors, to understand other cultures, to understand and empathize with people who are different, others, different backgrounds, different origins, different languages, different cuisines, you name it. And so pluralism in itself, and what the Centre does to promote pluralism, it's a sort of form of applied or active diversity training. So it's hard to pin down, but it's everything from mediation and conflict resolution to promoting people who promote pluralism, to developing a monitor which over time, building enough variables into this monitor, should be able to predict when social tensions are going to boil over and give us a handle on understanding which countries in the world are likely to face crisis. And that's the work of the centre. It's hard to define, but it's very important. And I think that Hazrat Imam's focus on pluralism came from all of the years that he has lived through, the conflicts in the societies where the Jamaat and their neighbours live, and the tensions, which sometimes are not overt, they're covert, but they affect everybody. And I think that word, pluralism, is his way of bringing an education which teaches people to understand each other.
You must have learned so many lessons from Maulana Hazrat Imam, growing up. Is there one that sticks out to you the most?
I think anyone who wants to watch this would have the same answer. I mean, there are so many lessons. It would be very difficult to pick one. But my daughter actually showed me a clip the other day, which she said inspires her, and it certainly also inspires me. I think it was an interview Hazrat Imam gave at Brown, where he said, everyone makes mistakes. Don't regret them, learn from them. There is no such thing as a perfect world or a perfect life. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful way of looking at the world. Of course, I mean, he's obviously inspires on so many levels. But even just working with him, watching his patience and his work ethic and his incredible care for everything around him, the planet, the people, everything, you can't help but be inspired every day.
Right. He's celebrating his 80th birthday. How is he celebrating? Are you going to be with him?
I think we're all going to be with him. And I think he's asked for a chocolate cake. Though I know that there will be a chocolate cake. And
samosas?
Yeah, of course, chicken samosas. It wouldn't be a birthday.
Which you enjoy as well, I hear.
It's genetic, I can't help it. But certainly I think we're all going to be with him on his birthday. My siblings, my uncle, hopefully the grandchildren as well.
Do you think he'll watch this interview?
Yes, I should think he probably will.
Wow.
I hope that's okay.
I'm sure he'll be very proud of you. Princess Zara, on behalf of the entire Jamaat, thank you for all the work you've done, all the hours you've put in, and all the lives that you've changed throughout the world. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me, and I never feel like I can do enough. So there's more to do.
You're doing so much, and you're such an inspiration for me and so many others around the world. And if I could, on behalf of all the Murids in the world, please wish Maulana Hazrat Imam a very happy birthday, and tell him he is always in our hearts and in our thoughts.
I will. I always pass on messages, and he's always happy to receive them. So I will pass on that message as well. Thank you.